Hi, good morning, and very good morning. Today is not going to be different, I believe, but let's try to make it different. And let's try to talk about autofocus system when it comes to camera, how it works, what exactly you need as an information to make the best decision to go for what kind of lenses you have to, you need to go for. Before I start and explain you about the autofocus system, how it works, pros and cons, you need to understand this thing that now the autofocus system of any camera brand is purely divided into two parts, one for photos, one for videos. There is a whole transition happened in last 5 6 years where the lenses are with less speed, slow autofocus from photos, they move to fast autofocus, you know, for videos, so they can get smooth transition of autofocus from foreground to background, which was not happening before when it comes to DSLR. I have mentioned this thing in my earlier videos that DSLR was built for photos only, so the autofocus system was primarily designed for photos. So you just do a slow autofocus system or the fast, it doesn't matter. For birds photography, action, sports, wildlife, for that you need fast autofocus system. That's why all those lenses like 400 2.8, 500 f4, 600 f4, or 800 6 power 5.6, all those lenses having the fastest autofocus motor inside it, and they were not only fast but they were very sharp lenses. So sharpness is not the topic, it's the autofocus that we need to talk about. So all those lenses were having still having very fast autofocus motor in it. So that's why they were not only expensive, but they are large, and very big lenses. But those fast autofocus motor were not able to build or not there in the small lenses. Why? Like 14-24, still not fast. 24-70, not fast. 70-200, probably you will find the older 70 to 200 slower in autofocus system in compared to new 70 to 200 in any brand. They are the new ones are considerably fast in when it comes to autofocus. Why? Because the now the main focus in on video. That's why the whole transition of autofocus is now completely shift from photos to video. For video, you need reliable autofocus, you need a smooth autofocus transition, and you need something which really catches, focus acquisition. So that's also a part of the lens design. That how quickly lens acquire the focus. That's why the Sony has like 4 autofocus motor, AF motor inside their lens, which grab the focus quickly and have that's the part of the fast autofocus acquisition, because once your main subject enter into the frame, the camera try to tell the focus, try to tell the lens that quickly go and acquire the focus for the main subject. So that's the lens part. Now the tracking of the autofocus system, once after the acquisition of autofocus, that's the camera part. But the acquisition of the focus is the lens part, because inside the lens, the fast, that lens element which move front and back, you know, which require the focus. How fast that moves, that defines how good the lens is and autofocus acquisition. So autofocus acquisition is the lens part, focus tracking is the camera part. Don't mix them together. Both are independent, but both work together to make a reliable autofocus system of any camera brand. Why Sony was pioneered in autofocus system? Because their camera were having the new algorithms which can track the human eye using the advanced algorithms inside embedded into the Sony camera bodies with the advanced SNR firmware, with the advanced AI algorithms. So the camera processor are constantly tracking the human face, which recognize and immediately tell the lens to go and acquire the focus for the eye. And that's how they based on that they found that their old lenses were not fast enough to acquire the focus. So they built the new lenses for the same focal lengths, like 70 to 200, like 24 to 70, or the new 12 to 24 2.8. All those lenses have very fast autofocus acquisition. Why? Because all the transition happened from the old DSLR type lenses or camera system. The whole ecosystem of the DSLR is now moved to video. The DSLR still holds, was the DSLR was built for photos. The whole ecosystem was built for photos. So it's the camera, the lenses, the flash, the telephoto lenses, the big zooms, or anything which you have seen so far or experienced so far was primarily designed for taking photos. So when it comes to autofocus, obviously there are so many factors. We have to understand how autofocus system works. So the autofocus system or every camera system is primarily divided into two parts, which I already mentioned. One is focus tracking, and one is focus acquisition, which is the lens inside the lens. But you need to understand that they both have to work together. Any type of mismatch between the camera autofocus system and the lens autofocus acquisition, any kind of mismatch will result, unreliable autofocus overall performance. Now, what that's supposed to mean? Let me explain. I have this Z5 in my hand, so of course it's primarily designed for photos. Oh, sorry, for videos. And the lens, which is 2470 f4s. This is general lens for making videos, and I made tons of videos using that lens. So whenever I come into the frame, the camera tells the lens that, okay, I see a human face, go and acquire the focus on the face. And the lens automatically starts hunting for my face and quickly grab the focus of over my face or over my eye smoothly, quietly, because the lens and the motor inside are silent wave motor, and they are efficiently uh, move the focus from foreground to background smoothly, just like it's supposed to be, because it's meant for videos. The whole ecosystem is built, the autofocus tracking and autofocus acquisition inside the lens built for videos. Now imagine I change this lens. For some reason I found, okay, no, I don't need this lens. I need 70 to 200. I don't have 70 to 200. I have 80 to 200, which is old T-tab lens, and it's having a very noisy autofocus, like grrr, grrr, something like that. But I'm keeping that 80 to 200 because it has certain characteristic. The output of that lens, it's unbelievable. So I'm keeping that lens. So imagine I use that old DSLR, which is this big, on that Z5. So I'm using this big DSLR lens on the Z5 using FTZ adapter in the middle. So FTZ adapter itself is a big hinder. It's a big if, a but. So it's kind of a hurdle, and I don't like FTZ. I don't like any kind of adapter which produce any kind of resistance when it comes to camera performance, especially when it comes to autofocus system. So the transition happens from the mirrorless to the DSLR world using the FTC adapter in the middle. Now if I'm trying to make a video, the camera going to tell the lens to start for focus for my face, and that lens is slow in autofocus. It takes a lot of time comparatively to this lens, comparatively to native 24 to 70 f4s lens. It takes a lot of time, maybe more than 100%, maybe 200%. It takes like grrr, 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 and in the meantime you feel like, oh man, camera autofocus system is crappy. The Z5 is crappy. No, it's not the Z5 which is crappy. Is that there's a mismatch between the camera autofocus tracking and the lens autofocus acquisition. There is a mismatch. Of course, the lens is going to ultimately acquire the focus, but it will take 2-3 times more in terms of overall time consumption for acquiring the focus, 2-3 times more. Like, let's say if this lens locks my focus from completely out of focus to completely in focus, take 1 second. So with 80 to 200 it may take like 3 to 4 seconds, which is a whole lot when it comes to videos. So you need to understand this thing that you have to use the same autofocus system. That's why I keep saying go for native lenses, go for native lenses. Don't go for FTZ adapter or try to adopt the DSLR lenses over the mirrorless. Even you have to use the DSLR lenses on DSLR. There are third-party lenses like M42 screw mount lens, or let's suppose any type of thing. So don't try to adopt lenses which are completely off from the main manufacturer. Until unless it is offered by like Sigma making all three brands, lenses for all three brands, so Sony, Nikon, Canon. Same goes for Tamron. Tamron is making lenses for all three brands natively, so that's fine. But again, those third-party lenses are still not as efficient as the own branded lenses, because the branded lenses always have an edge over the third-party lenses, even if they are built for the native mount. For example, if the Nikon have 2470 f4 native lens just like this, exactly this lens is built for this Z5 2470 f4 lens. Imagine Tamron makes or Sigma makes 2470 2.8 for this lens, for this camera body Z5 natively for Z mount, and they will at one point of time they will. So if they're able to do that, and I'm going to use that lens on that, of course it will give me one stop more light from f4 to 2.8, but I'm not going to have full advantage because there will be certain characteristic or certain feature which I cannot use on the third party lenses, which are only, which is the company secret. These companies Sigma and Tamron, they reverse engineering, and they make the autofocus system enabling by doing the reverse engineering, but they cannot unlock the full potential or what kind of things. For example, if this lens have any button on it, a special button which is called function button, I can make those function button on the lens control from the camera body or to enable any kind of function. But those third-party companies, they don't have this kind of information to build this thing, and you can go and verify this thing by yourself. You will find that all those third-party lenses can only do the autofocus, that's it. But any additional function you won't be able to find on those third-party lenses, like a function button on the lens. They don't have it because they don't know what they are going to do with it, because they don't know how that function button on their lens is going to communicate with the camera, because it's company proprietary, company secret, which no company wants to share with these third-party manufacturers. So go for native lenses. It's always an advantage for you. It always gives you advantage in the end of the day. Yeah, it's those third-party lenses are cheaper, reliable, good for short, but they are all short-term advantages, not long-term advantages. Tell me any Sigma lens. I shouldn't be saying that, but now we are talking about third-party lenses, so I have to mention this thing as an example. And I always quote that thing. Tell me one guy in your circle who is using Sigma lens since last 20 years. No, 20 years too much. 10 years, no, it's still too much. 5 years, okay, let's say 5 years. Tell me one guy in your known circle of friends or photography community who is using Sigma lens since last 5 years without any issue, without getting it repaired. Just tell me one guy, one guy. I bet you won't able to find anybody. Why? Because those lenses are not built for last. Those lenses are not built for long run. They are always built for short run, and all those retailers, third party retailers, are always going to sell those lenses by telling you that, well, it's for 2 years, and after that go for a new brand or go for a new lens, and for 2 years it will work fine. Why 2 years? Why can't it work for 10 years, 20 years? I have lenses with me who are 45 years old, and I'm using it. Older than you, and I am using it, and I'm still making fantastic images using those old lenses. Anyways, that's off the topic. The main topic is how the camera works. Remember, slower lens always going to ruin your focus, overall focus system. Your camera is fast. The new cameras are faster. Older cameras are slower. I have an extreme example, a real life example with me, which happens, and it shocked me. It literally shocked me, and I was like, seriously? What happened was, I was using 500 5.6 PF lens. 500 5.6 is the new generation lens. It has faster autofocus. And I was using D4S, which is the flagship camera body. And after D4S, Nikon launched D500, D850 and D5. All these three cameras, D500, D850, D5, especially D5 and D500. These two cameras are having superior autofocus performance because they built for sports action wildlife. And I have D4S, which I thought it's a flagship body, so it's good in autofocus system. So I was using a 500 5.6 on D4S, and for some reason I was not able to. I clearly noticed that lens is slow, and I was like, why is it's $3,000, $3,500 lens, and why it's slow? It's slow, so the price is high. Normally at this price point, I should have get fast autofocus performance from the lens, but that was not happening with D4S and 500 5.6 PF lens. So I was just, I don't know, I didn't know what to do. Now out of nowhere, I used the same 500 5.6. I slapped that lens on my D500, and the moment I fired the very first frame, I was like, whoa, what the hell happened with that lens? How come that lens suddenly becomes so fast? It wasn't that fast in autofocus acquisition when it was working with D4S. Why with D500? And then I clearly noticed the same lens, which was supposed to work fast on D4S. It was working 100% at full its potential on D500. So this tells me that if the lens is fast but you are putting on slow camera, you getting slow autofocus. But if it goes opposite, if you're having a fast camera with slow autofocus system lens, with slow autofocus acquisition lens, you will get slow autofocus performance. I have another example for like 200 to 500, 5.6 zoom lens. It has a slow autofocus system built into the lens. That's why it's cheap. It's 3,500 dirhams, whereas 500 5.6 is 13,000 dirhams. So 13,000 versus 3,500, both 500 5.6. So why there is a difference? Of course, 200 to 500, it's a zoom lens, and it's consumer quality lens 5.6. Of course, it's fast. It has amazing VR built into the lens, but that 500 prime 5.6, it's much more compact than 200 to 500. So 500 5.6, 200 to 500 with constant aperture of 5.6. 3,500 dirhams, 13,000 dirhams. The price difference is much. The price difference is basically because of two things. First, the superior and much faster, much faster autofocus acquisition and the sharpness. Oh, that 500 5.6, not only compact. Oh man, it's sharp. It's so sharp. So I use that with D500. Oh my god. Then the whole world changed and I was like tack tack tack. I was getting, grabbing the focus with 500 5.6 with over D500. So if you are wildlife shooter, you just use 500 5.6 prime on D500 and you are not going to have, you know, party, great party. So you have to understand this thing that you have to match the lens autofocus acquisition and focus tracking on the camera together. How you're going to know that? Of course, there are certain ways, there are certain things which you can go with. All the new cameras comes with much more autofocus. Basically, price defines the autofocus package, regardless if it's the lens or the camera. Of consumer base, D500 is less in price. It's good, but it's less. Even in camera, there are two things which you have to consider from the autofocus performance. One is the autofocus sensor, okay, dedicated processor for autofocus in the camera. That's one thing, and the SNR firmware which tracks the which basically tracks the focus point across the frame. That's number two. So number one is the number one inside the camera, the dedicated autofocus processor. Number two, the software which tracks the focus point across the frame, which is called focus tracking. So the difference between D500 and D5 was D5 have both the processor and the advanced autofocus algorithm. In D500 we were only having one, which was autofocus algorithm. The D500 doesn't have the dedicated autofocus processor in it. So that's the only difference between D5 and D500 and D5. So that's why the flagship cameras are expensive. That's the reason. You are getting the full performance. Technology comes with price. I always say that. Technology comes with price. You can't get everything at lower price point. You just can't. Yeah, there are workarounds, but not 100%. And for workaround, you have to be so much efficient. So, and you have to be agile and you have to be on your toes. You know how to work around with at cheaper price points gear, using cheap gears. For that you have to know the knowledge about the gears, which is subjective. Anyway, so now we know that in camera we have two things: dedicated autofocus processor and the software for tracking the focus points across the frame. In lens we have only one thing, which is lens autofocus motor, how good or how fast it is to acquire the focus. So autofocus acquisition, that's lens part, and autofocus tracking is the camera part, which contains two sub elements. Number one, dedicated processor. Number two, software. It's just like you are having a best car engine in the world, like Bugatti Veyron. We a W12, W16 engine, 8.0 liter, and with four turbochargers. You are going 300 plus miles an hour, literally 300 plus miles an hour, but you don't have the road to run it. So what's the point of having 300 miles per hour car that you cannot run? Or on the other hand, it's like you are having the road, the best road in the world, but you don't have the car with high engine capacity which can run 300 miles per hour. You don't have the car. So the car is just like camera, the road is just like lenses. But if you have the road and Bugatti Veyron, so you can do together 300 plus miles an hour. That's it. That's the whole summary of this video. In order to get the best when it comes to autofocus, don't blame the company all the time. You need to understand that if you are using Nikon or Canon or Sony camera and you are using Sigma lenses or Tamron lenses trying to save some money and you are blaming the camera company for having missing the focus, it's your fault. Because you are mismatching. You are using a third-party lens on the camera which is not designed for. That lens has no idea what kind of additional information or signal that is getting from the camera to do some extra effort which only native lenses can do or native lenses can understand. You have no idea. Those third-party companies have no idea. Neither have you. So you have to work efficiently. You have to work, by having this understanding that go for always native lenses. Don't go on for third party. I stopped going third party lenses long time ago since I understand how this autofocus system works. Yeah, it saved me ton of money back in the past, but I learned this thing through the hard way that cheaper gear always end up expensive. I had 3 Sigma lenses in my life and all 3 gave me headache. Headache. In terms of performance, in terms of the build quality, in terms of autofocus. All 3. Build quality. I had 120 to 300 2.8 Sport Edition from Sigma. When nobody knows that 120 to 300 even exists. 2.8. And I sold it to a guy because the lens hood screw was off after 2 months of buying, and I bought it brand new. It was off after 2 months, but I was still using it. But after 1 year, I started having some build quality issues. So I sold it to a guy. And that guy, after 1 week, tried to sell me back and asked me return of his money. I said, sorry, whatever I've sold is done. Why that guy tried to sell me back the same lens? Because he also realized the issues with the lenses. And when I was trying to sell the camera, I clearly told them that that's the reason I'm trying to sell. And he bought it. And after a week, after 10 days a week, he said, man, I'm not happy with the lens. Can you take it back? And I was like, sorry, I'm not going to take this lens back. No way. I had one 50-600 Sigma. Severely bad optical performance. Severely bad optical performance. Before that, I have 35 1.4 prime. Severely bad optical rendering issues. Very bad optical rendering issues. The only lens which is so far working and good enough, of course, 85 1.4, but this one big lens, and that 105 1.4. By the way, that 105 1.4 from Sigma is better, much better. So it's not always Sigma bad, but not most of the time they are bad, very bad. Tamron is the same. Tamron is also having long-lasting quality control issues. Regardless, even if it's the G2 series, it's the same. They are good, but again, quality control issues. Anyhow, so the whole idea today's topic is how the autofocus acquisition works. You need to understand this thing that lens focus acquisition is the lens part, focus tracking is a camera part. And if anything is missing, it only you are responsible for it, because you are either using third-party lenses or you are using either a slow focus lens on your latest camera, or you are using an old camera with a faster lens. That's the whole summary of today's video. I hope you enjoyed today's show, and I'll see you guys with some new stuff in future. Till then, take care.